Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the Special Senate Task Force on Fisheries. We have an exciting agenda today, and we're very privileged to have the Executive Director of the Coastal Resources Management Council with us today, Grover Fugate. Grover is recognized nationally and globally for his work he's done on SAM plan, ocean SAM, just a myriad of work over the years, and we're very pleased to have you here today, Grover. And the first thing that we've asked you to brief us on is a review of the Block Island offshore wind cables.
Senator, I would also like to have Julia from DEM is also here, so if anybody has any questions for DEM.
Welcome, Julia. Glad to see you here. Before you begin, Grover, I might as well introduce the senators that we have here. I'm Senator Salzowski to my left. We have Leader Michael McCaffrey, and we have Minority Leader Dennis Algier. We have Senator McKinney and Senator Bridget Alberta here.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I'll start off with the one closest to home for us, which is the Block Island wind farm. And this is obviously a picture of the wind farm off Block Island, and there are 5 towers there, 6 megawatts each of those machines for a total of 30 megawatts. There are actually 2 cables involved with this project. One comes from the wind farm into Block Island and Crescent Beach, and goes into, probably should just advance this so you can see, goes into Crescent Beach, and then there's an export cable that leaves from there to go over into Narragansett. When we were going through the permitting process for these cables, we had recommended what's called directional drilling programs for each one of these because of the complexity of the environment that they're in. In Narragansett, there was a lot of bedrock actually that they had to go through much more than they anticipated. But also on Block Island, the complexity of the environment that they're in is a mixture of sand, boulders, cobbles, those types of things, and not really conducive to the technology that they ended up using, which is called a jet plow. A jet plow is a piece of machinery that's towed along the floor of the ocean. It has a high-pressure water jet system that fluidizes the bed, pushes it up into the water column, cable falls down into the trench itself, and then the sediment comes out of suspension and settles on the cable. So there's no burial required or discharge from side casting. When they were going through the hearing process, they represented to us that they could achieve 6 to 8 feet over Block Island, that directional drilling was not necessary, that they could achieve that with the jet plow. We questioned that on a number of occasions with the companies, particularly at the time Deepwater Wind. Ultimately, the subcommittee and then the full council agreed to allow for the jet plowing onto the beach, Crescent Beach. Part of the requirements for that project, from our perspective, was an as-built survey, meaning that as soon as the cable went, they actually had to survey the cable and give us how much overburden or material was on top of the cable, so we would know that. The contractor, what they were supposed to do when they came in on the beach and they saw that they couldn't achieve burial depth, was supposed to stop and reach out to us, but they didn't. So at the end of the day, the burial depth in that area over the grid portion or the export cable going back to Narragansett was less than 2 feet. They were supposed to achieve a minimum burial depth in that location of went anywhere from 4 to 8 feet. And within a matter of months became exposed on the beach. Now, Crescent Beach is the main swimming beach for the town of Block Island. So we immediately entered into an enforcement discussion with them. Since then, the cable has been split out, so the cable that's coming in from the wind farm is Deepwater now, Force, and the cable that leaves Block Island to go to Narragansett is National Grid's line. So we're dealing with two owners now in the enforcement process, because since then, the deep water cable has also seen exposure at one event. The area that they're in is a very dynamic area, a lot of waves, a lot of sediment movement, and so there's a high potential for uncovering of this cable. Grid immediately proposed to put concrete mats, and given the fact that this is a main swimming beach for Block Island, we didn't agree with that. We told them that was unacceptable. They then wanted to put a Techmar cable, which is a large plastic coating over the cable. And we agreed that while they could do that for protection of the cable from the abrasive forces of the wave action and whatnot in that area, that it was unacceptable as a permanent solution. So since then, we've been in discussions with both companies on the reburial of that cable. The problem that they have now, quite frankly, is the current cable's under tension. So even if they were able to redig a trench, a deeper trench, there's not enough flex in the line of the cable to allow it to drop into the new trench, which dictates now that they're going to have to splice in a new cable, and it would be a seaward splice. After a number of discussions with them, proposing alternative technologies throughout the process, none of them seem to work. So they're going to go back to our original recommendation and directionally drill the line. So they will have to directionally drill 2 new holes. They have to do 2 seaward splices on the cable. And are hoping to get that done this fall into next spring. They're out to procurement right now for the services for the construction firms to do that. And they've also gone out to procurement for a new section of cable to go in that area. So that's essentially where the Block Island matter is. Orsted is, I think, feeling the pressure and wants to get this corrected so that they can ensure that their corporate citizening grid has finally come to the conclusion that they need to bury the cable to make this problem go away. So, should I stop there and see if there are any questions?
Yeah, I think we have a few questions, Grover. Thank you very much. You said that now this has to be repaired, going back to square one, what was recommended by CRMC to begin with.
Yes.
I guess the bottom line is, who is going to pay for this?
That is before the PUC and FERC right now. And it may end up in litigation. The PUC's been in looking at our files and going through those files. So it may be a situation where I don't know what the latest status of the negotiations are with Grid and the PUC, but it may end up in litigation.
Okay, so that's ongoing. Okay, thank you. Also, on Crescent Beach on Block Island, obviously that's a very popular beach, and with this issue going on, has there been warnings for boaters or water skiers, jet skiers, swimmers about this area?
Yes, in the area where the cable was becoming exposed, we required them to immediately bury the cable, so they engaged in an operation where they, at low tide, went out with equipment and covered the cable to make sure it remained buried. And within the general area where it was near the surface, and they hadn't achieved burial depth, as you're probably aware, there are large boats that go over and anchor in that area. So we had to have Grid post a no anchoring zone in that area. The signage that they were using was lit signs, but as required by the Coast Guard. But the town was concerned because it looked like a runway going down the beach. Since then, what we've done is each year there's a notice to mariners that there is a cable there, and it is a shallow depth cable to make sure that the boaters in that area stay away from that cable.
So what is, other than they realize that they have to do it the way it was originally recommended to be done, does CRMC have any type of authority to impose any fines upon them because it has not been satisfactory the way they buried them?
We have the ability to impose administrative fines, but they only go up to a maximum of $1,500, and then for each day beyond that, it's charged out, but it runs up to a maximum of $10,000. Doesn't take care of the situation. The other thing is that we consider that, Senator, but we also realize that any fines potentially might fall back on rate base, and we're only going to cost Rhode Islanders. So.
I believe Leader McCaffrey has a question for you.
Sure.
How much cable do they have to reinstall because they didn't comply with the original plans?
I'm not sure of the actual length because they have to put a what's called an omega loop in it. So when they bring up the splice, they can't bury that portion of it. It sort of flops back into the water at that point. But it's in the hundreds of feet.
Now,
Potentially actually closer to over a half mile.
Oh, wow, it's pretty.
Yeah. It's going to be about 20 feet of water when they get with the splice one.
Now, who did they come to for a waiver from the original plan? CRMC?
Yes.
And your organization approved the waiver?
We didn't, what waiver are we talking?
Waiver that they didn't have to go down and bury as far as the original plans proposed.
Yeah, there was, in the representations before the council, they indicated they could achieve 6 to 8 feet. There was a separate findings of fact that came out that indicated final burial depth had to be at 4 feet. So when the council voted on it and we issued the decision, it was at 4 feet at that point. Now, in the interior of the beach, they did achieve the 6 to 8 feet.
Now, you're talking about potential lawsuits and who could be on the hook there. Are you also looking that CRMC could be on the hook for part of the cost to reinstall this line?
Well, if they had done this, we originally asked to directly drill it, nobody would be in this situation right now, so.
That's not answering the question, but
I don't think we have any exposure because the 4 foot of depth should have been sufficient even within the dynamic area. And would have, I don't think, again, we would be here if that were the case because the cable wouldn't have been exposed. What we've been monitoring, we require monitoring of them on a monthly basis. What we've seen is there's about 2 feet of sediment that tends to move in and out of the area.
Are there issues on the other side of the cable in Narragansett?
No, that was actually drilled as we requested, and a lot of it is in bedrock.
Thanks.
Just to follow up on Senator McCaffrey's question, Grover, as far as, he's an attorney, I'm not, but as far as the record, would that reflect that CRMC had made that recommendation to the 4 foot depth? If there is litigation with CRMC, is that part of the written record on the file?
It is part of a decision that went out, yes.
Thank you. Senator Palmer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Grover, CRMC requested 6 to 8 feet or 4 feet. I've heard both now.
We requested 6 to 8 feet, and as it came in the around the mean high water mark, we actually requested 10 feet to get into that area. Because once you get into that very near shore zone, it's very dynamic and there's a lot of loss of material.
So I said we had an engineering firm do the analysis.
They did, yes.
An ocean engineering firm did the analysis on the laying of the cable.
They did, yes. Deepwater had an engineering firm that did geotech. The unfortunate thing, as we indicated to them, is that the environment, the layers of sand, gravel, and cobble are very complex there, and it can vary in a matter of feet. I think it's obvious that they did not do enough geotech to detect the, there's an area of boulders that they ran into where the plow ran up, and that's where it's shallow. They did not know that was there until they went to lay the cable.
What's the diameter of the cable? Like the diameter of the cable?
Diameter of the cable is probably about 12 inches in diameter.
So it's either Ørsted or National Grid that will be required to,
Both will.
both of them. I concur with the chair and the majority leader with regards to, this should not be a cost that's going to be borne by any ratepayer whatsoever. If the engineering, was it appropriate? Then they need to go back to the engineering firm that's licensed to do professional engineering and say, this is what it is. If it didn't happen, you're not part of the review of the PUC.
The PUC's asked for records, particularly during the pre-permitting, permitting, and then during the enforcement.
Just one last question, Richard.
Yes.
When do we expect a ruling from the PUC with regards to?
I am not sure on that, Senator. We've turned over all our records to him, so we have not heard back from him. That was several months ago.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So Grover, initially when this came before the council, a recommendation was made to install these cable in a way that they now must go back and reinstall.
That's correct.
And that's documented, obviously.
Yes,
And hopefully that's documents that the PUC will have before them when they render a decision.
they do have those documents.
And I echo my colleagues' concerns about the ratepayers being responsible for this very costly measure, which is, you know, if you do a postmortem, this should occur, they would have probably followed the direction of Coastal and perhaps others in the engineering of the line of the cables. I just hope that going forward, these companies who are going to be building farms understand what happened in Block Island and Points North.
I think there's been learning on both sides.
They don't make the same mistake.
Yeah. There's been learning on both sides. What is happening right now is we are changing our regulations, both in state waters and then our federal consistency provisions, to tighten up on cables and what the percent burial is allowed.
Let me just stop in a minute.
Sure.
State waters. So state waters, presently this project.
I'll just show you up here.
Yeah.
So the map, what you're seeing here represents, this is the state water boundary, and then up there is the state water boundary. There's a short span of federal waters in between. This is the renewable energy zone that was designated by the Council of the Ocean SAM. And then what you see is the export cable and then the Block Island cable that comes in. All the other projects are going to be to the east. And so a lot of that water they're going to be crossing is federal waters. Typically, the state would not have any authority in federal waters except through the federal consistency provisions. So what we're trying to do is tighten up on those regs. Our first version that went out, the companies objected to. They claimed they were too stringent. So we're trying to go back and deal with that. But we're going through the ORR process of giving them the initial review of the regs to tighten up on these cable issues.
Any other questions? Senator Key.
Director, I'm still not fully understanding. So did CRMC acquiesce to the change from the original plan? Did they approve it? What exactly did CRMC do when confronted with the fact that Ørsted apparently did not like what the original plan said?
Well, the original discussions with them were for two things. One was for the 6 and 8 feet, the other was for the directional drill. They, being National Grid and Deepwater at the time, assured us that they had a high degree of confidence that they could jet plow that cable in and easily meet the depth, based on the engineering results that they had for the geotech work that they had done. Then there is the directional drilling part of it too, which we recommended to get it out there. So there were two aspects of the decision that the council made a decision, one, to allow that jet plowing, and then two, to lessen the depth from 6 to 8 to 4, but they never even achieved the 4 foot depth. When it was finally laid, it was less than 2 feet.
follow up on that. At the beginning of your presentation, you talked about CRMC originally had recommended for the jet plowing for 6 to 8. And then you also talked about the type of soils that were around Crescent Beach. The type of
Yes.
soil, was it found that it was more difficult to dig in that area?
Yes, they were expecting that they were going to have essentially a sand deposit that they're going to be going through. As it came in on shore, they ran into an area that was essentially boulders and cobbles. In that environment, the jet plow can't get through it, and it rides up over it and then back down again. So it was the cobble area that provided the problem to them, and they had not done enough geotech work to pick those areas up. And neither did their sub-bottom data show that reflection area. So our geologists, however, knew after studying Block Island for many, many years, knew the complexity of that environment, and were recommending to us that we one, go deeper, and then two, directionally drill. So that's what the staff recommendation was for.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Grover on this particular issue? If later on, we can always come back if anyone else does have any questions on the Block Island update. Very illuminating, Grover.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
for that. So if you'd like to move on.